Right on. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. And hello. You're listening to Revision Media at revisionmedia.org. Today is Wednesday, October 23rd, 2019. I'm your host, Richard Kary, and this is Arcane Semantics. Tonight, folks, I have a very interesting guest here joining us. I have one Mr. Chris Dorsey. Now, Chris is a journalist. He's an analyst, writer, researcher, and political activist. Chris is a member of the Constitutional Virginia Militia and author of the book, The Militia Handbook. So we're here to discuss a number of topics. Chris, thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on, Richard. I'm looking forward to the show.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've been aware of you as a journalist for some time. Been doing this a bit longer than myself, at the very least. But I noticed you're right near the eye of the storm there. You're right near D.C., where you're living, huh?
Yeah, I'm in Richmond, Virginia. It's about an hour and a half drive. Well, anywhere from an hour and a half to 10 hours, depending on the traffic. But it's not very far from the District of Columbia, or what was originally called Rome, Maryland. But we are very close to one of the enemy strongholds. But it's everywhere. We are also in the state capital of Virginia, and of course, the state and federal government are equally criminal and part of the same one world entity that we reference always when we're discussing the government. So yeah, we make usually a few trips to DC every year to let them know exactly what's going on. We like to go up during the APAC conference, and I think that's a key thing that not many folks have focused on, but is on some levels the entity that controls the governing structure and in general the lives of we as an occupied people, we as a people who are having war waged against us by entities like APAC, which is the Israeli lobby, the number one Israeli lobby, the most popular Israeli lobby that controls the White House, controls the Congress. But we don't separate APAC from the Federal Reserve Bank or the Bank for International Settlements or the local district attorney's office in Maryland or Commonwealth's attorney's office in Virginia. It's all the same thing, and we have an overarching view about the solutions, and that's what we're all about. Not just discussing the problem, which we know from firsthand, and we confront our enemies with guns. We like to surround the police with guns. We like to surround criminal government officials with guns and cameras. And we document that all government officials, all lawyers, all judges, all millionaires and billionaires, all police officers, obviously all elected officials, they're all guilty of treason, and we wish to have them punished for their crimes. And that those are capital offenses. So that's basically where we stand, and everybody else has to catch up with us, or there's no hope for humanity at all in any way.
A lot of people are wary of militias as something that can make you exemplified as a radical group. A lot of people are taught these days a different interpretation of the original law as far as a well-regulated militia. I mean, I understand with Common Core, they're completely distorting the definition today. Isn't that right?
Well, I mean, as far as anything to do with the public schools, we call for the abolition, not just of the government, but especially public schools. That's an indoctrination center. It's a jail. It's set up like a jail for children. It is a real jail. Even office buildings are jails for debt slaves. But getting back to your main point, I couldn't agree more. The militia is the basis of the law in any common law system. Now, our law is based on the English common law, which is based in the King James Version of the Bible. And the militia sprung out of something called the Fyrd, F-Y-R-D, and our ancestors, like my ancestor, King Alfred the Great, would call up the Fyrd of his nobles, and that basically just meant the peerage, the body of the people trained to arms. And the only important thing about that is that all political will comes through control of the deadly weapons of war. And so basically, as we put forward in the Militia Handbook, there's only two political issues that really matter at the end of the day. Now, we have opinions on any number of different things, but ideas don't mean anything without the ability to enforce your right to free speech. So the First Amendment enforces the Second Amendment. And the Second Amendment is the body of the people trained to arms. That's the Second Amendment to the Constitution for the United States is based on Article 1, Section 13 of Virginia Declaration of Rights, which is the basis of the Declaration of Independence and is the basis of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Also, English common law, all these documents based in the English common law. Now we'll probably get into more of that. What's the basis of common law? What does that have to do with Freemasonry? What does that have to do with all these other things? But right now, the most important thing is that the body of the people control the weapons of war. And the same goes with Article 1. That gives the body of the people, and this is Article 1 of the Constitution for USA, that gives the body of the people control over the issuance and valuation of currency. So without control of the weapons of war and without control of the issuance and valuation of currency, there is no political freedom. When an entity or a group of individuals or the body of the people do not control the weapons of war and do not control the issuance of currency, they are slaves. End of story. End of story. So the basis of all law is the ability of the body of the people to exert our God-given rights, which is the right to defend ourselves. Because we have property, which is everything that we work for, and without the ability to use deadly force against our enemies, then we are slaves and all of our property is gone. It's somebody else's property. Whose property is it? Whoever has the guns. If you get pulled over by a cop and he said, "Oh, you didn't stop at that stop sign," and you did stop at the stop sign, or there was no need for you to stop at a stop sign, and there was nobody coming along, what is it? Would anybody stop if this so-called police officer, this thug wearing a gang uniform who is engaged in war against the people, if he didn't have the ability to pull you over and shoot you or beat you up or stick you in a cage, would anybody ever listen to anything the police said? No, they wouldn't. And there's no reason to. There's absolutely no reason to. We are a free people. God made a man and man made government. Man can never be subject to his own creation. So yeah, they have twisted everything around with the militia. But I'll tell you another thing. When you see the words militia, or when you see militia members, say, taking over a rest stop in the middle of nowhere in Oregon, those are government agents. They're not real militia. Militia doesn't mean a bunch of guys running around in a field somewhere or taking over some spot in the middle of nowhere, riding around on horses with cowboy hats. That's not a militia. Militia means the body of the people controlling all the weapons of war, and it doesn't even mean the right to carry around a rifle or a handgun. It means the nuclear codes. That's more important. It means the body of the people controlling the nuclear codes, the underground military bases, the drones, the biological warfare that they use against us, the weather warfare that they use against us, the information and public airwaves, psychological operations that they're running constantly. It means gaining control of all the weapons of war, and nothing else short of that will solve anything. So
that was going to be my next question, because they're so concerned about the AR-15, is it? They like to use the word assault rifles. It wouldn't even be in that category. But, I mean, we really should have far more than that. We should have equal to that of the military, and not just firearms, as you say, but actually access to the nuclear codes, keys to the nuclear codes, the nuclear weapons.
Absolutely. What, you trust your enemies with that?
Sovereignty. But the state should have sovereignty over the federal level. I mean, originally, there was more of a nation-state sovereignty in the design in this country. I have to ask what your opinion is on that. I mean, that's where it gets curious. I mean, would nuclear weapons exist at the state level? It's only because of this federalized United States of America.
Well, I referenced this in the Militia Handbook, and so according to the Constitution for the United States, the militia is a state. There's a state militia in the Constitution, and it wasn't until the so-called war between the states, the so-called Civil War, when this militia system ceased to be. There weren't police forces, there was militia, and that's the people taking care of their own property. So what's the property of the federal government? What's the property of the people? So, I mean, we the people ordain the government. What does that mean? I mean, we can get into this, but when it was originated, my belief and many others, and when one comprehends common law, especially English common law, it can only be a certain way. Then when they said the body of the people, that's those with a claim to the throne of England, and also other realms in Europe. It means you got to be one of the people. They don't say, oh, it meant land-owning white male. That's what people meant. That's not what people meant. That's not what people meant. People meant something even larger than that. So when we have a system where they allege that there are enough so-called nuclear weapons, and I've heard it all from the nukes are fake, you can drink nuclear radiation, whatever. Weapons of mass destruction, mother of all bomb technologies, megatons worth of TNT in precise weaponry that can wipe out most life on the planet. When they have these things, and they tell us, oh well, we got to have enough weapons to wipe out everybody else because they want to wipe you out. And then you find out that all these governments like Russia, China, United States, Israel, all the ones, Pakistan, India, all the nations, France, Great Britain, all the nations with nuclear weapons, they're all controlled by the same financial source, the Bank for International Settlements. And they all work together in every single war that's ever taken place in the modern era. I mean, going back to at least the so-called Napoleonic Wars, when Wellington defeated Napoleon, financed, as we know, famously by the Rothschild family on both sides. On both sides. So when you see that, then you start figuring out everything from there. Hey, wait a second. They got nukes aimed at us? We don't have any control over it? It can wipe us out at any time without any warning? No underground bunkers for us. They got those underground bunkers for the people in North Korea and Russia and Switzerland, every place else. Except for, what, the United States? And who's getting us into this stuff? Clandestine shadow government? Who's enslaving us through debt? And actual slavery? Forced, violent slavery? No, no thanks. We control those weapons of war. Where do we get the claims? I mean, we can get into that if you wish right now, or we can get into that later. It's about bloodlines, and it's not the chosen people are actually different from the so-called imposter chosen people, those who say they are Jews but are not, referencing the basis of the English common law, which is the King James Bible. But I mean, it's a vast strategy, but when you boil it down to a certain point, it's about outflanking the enemy with deadly force. That's all warfare is. God made man warlike, and there has never been a history or a period of time, I should say, where warfare has not been operative and active in every sort of way. Man is warlike. So they have us convinced that we must be meek in a world based on war, and I don't accept that.
I'd like to go over a bit. I mean, the current war zone updates. I'm sure you've been keeping with. You do a lot of excellent geopolitical analysis. I notice you've also been on Press TV. So you definitely have been sought out on both sides of a lot of the current conflicts. We have a couple callers on the line as well, but I'll perhaps get to them in just a moment. If you could first give us a bit of a description of what you see playing out right now, as far as these current war zone escalations. Conflict regions and such.
Well, it's very interesting what's going on in Syria, because when I used to go on Press TV and I used to go on Al Alam TV, which has a much bigger viewership than press TV, is at least according to Wikipedia. But I was contacted many years ago to do analysis on foreign policy regarding Turkey, the European Union, and especially regarding ISIS, Syria, and what we've said the whole time. And I used to go on with members of the Syrian parliament on Al Alam TV, or Russian government officials, Yemeni brigadier general in the Yemeni army, and we would discuss these things. And it's, I mean, this stuff is very simple, I should say. Without getting myself too tongue-tied, this stuff is all based on all the governments of the world, and Assad, Putin, John Kerry, Donald Trump, Obama, they're all in on it together with the Iranians and the French and the Israelis and the Saudis. They're just destroying that country, and they're keeping the war going along, and they're doing business with the gas pipelines. They're still building the gas pipelines. They're still human trafficking. They're still creating these refugee crises, which are overloading the United States, Canada, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, etc. And they're all working together. All the governments of the world, they're not opposed to one another. They all work together. And any sort of actual warfare is just incidental between these armed factions. One thing that we were saying years ago, that ISIS stands for the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. And this guy Baghdadi, his real name is Elliot Simone, or Simone Elliott, or Simon Elliott. He's a Mossad agent. And when you talk about ISIS, there's something called ISIS that is a military intelligence operation that's located in both Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. and Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So they're just playing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you mentioned Iran, and I mean, it does seem, when I think of the Greater Israel Project, that they are a definite hurdle. That Israel is preoccupied with wanting to ultimately get past, bulldoze over, if you will, the way they like to do things based on treatment of Palestinians. But, I mean, it seems to me that there would be legitimate Iranian people who want to hold on to their country, their sovereignty, their land. So, I mean...
I think that's the case. I think that there are factions in the Iranian government totally run by the Mossad, though. I mean, there's Mossad and CIA agents all over their airwaves. I mean, we talked about one, Stephen Kelly. He goes on Iranian television and he says he's a CIA agent, right?
Well, he was a former civilian contractor. He had a high-tech laser company.
Yeah, I know the story. I know the front story. But was he a CIA agent or was he not a CIA agent? I mean, there's lots of them that go on there. I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't know anyone besides myself that goes on there that's not a former NSA agent, Scott Rickert, that's not a former CIA agent, Stephen Kelly, what's that guy's name, Scott Bennett, who's Army Intelligence.
I know one gentleman who's been on Press TV who doesn't seem to have that sort of a past. He's a professor.
Yeah, paid by the government. Paid by the government. Yeah, right. Do you think, I mean, do they, hey, are college campuses and college professors a hotbed for CIA operations?
So we should probably get to these callers you have on the line.
But I just, I mean, like, so I'm not wrong about that. I mean, most folks know that the CIA is heavily operating, and we don't have to just say CIA. It could be DHS, it could be NSA, it could be FBI. but they operate and their front men have always been college professors, right?
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I mean,
Do you disagree?
all right, I suppose that would be just as valid. We have a couple callers. The first one that joined us was 985 in Louisiana. Hello. Thanks for calling in.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. And before I proceed to talk, I just want to know, am I being heard very well? I'm not on a good phone.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you sound fine.
Okay, good. Just wanted to clear that up. Well, anyway, what earlier Chris was discussing, basically everything, not only Chris, but we talked about is common law. Now, everybody listening is very familiar with that. Common law is nothing more than the United States or English version of natural law or God's law. Now, John Locke, who I like to call the father of the Constitution, I have his book right in front of me, and I'm going to read a small sentence, or I don't know, maybe a short paragraph of the state of war, because everything we're talking about right now is war. War is being waged against you, whether it's a bullet or whether it's some disinformation piece. It's all weapons of war. And what we use at the militia is our weapons right now are our mind and the knowledge of the law. Now again, chapter 3, the state of war. The state of war is a state of enmity and destruction, and therefore declaring by word or action, not a passionate and hasty, but a sedate, settled design upon another man's life, puts him in a state of war with him against he has declared such an intention. I'm going to skip over a little bit because I want to get to the bread and butter of this whole thing. I should have a right to destroy that which threatens me with destruction. For by the fundamental law of nature, man to be preserved as much as possible. When all cannot be preserved, the safety of the innocent shall be preferred. Now again, we see the government, they have no concern for the safety of the innocent, but yet they're the only ones that are allowed to have the weapons of war and defend themselves. I mean, these days you can be subjected to government kidnapping if you defend yourself, especially from a government official. It's again, that's pretty much all I wanted to read. What are your thoughts on this, gentlemen?
Well, yeah, that's David. That's David Dotrieve. He's been working with the militia for several years now, and I'd like to follow up by that. It says, anyone who wishes to, this part goes on. Anyone who wishes to take your property against your will, you have the right and the duty to kill them if you can. And that's the basis of all law. So when we talk about the Constitution and the militia, that's what it's all about. It's not about a bunch of, white trash pieces of garbage running around in the woods, espousing, pro-Trump rhetoric, or a bunch of, Mormons, out in the middle of nowhere at a rest stop in Oregon, which really, that's of no concern to me. That's a whole other different country. That wasn't part of the original 13 colonies. Those guys can go off, and we'll take all that. That's Upper Mexico. If you ask me, we don't care about that stuff. We don't care about anybody's opinion who doesn't agree with us 100%, because we are serious about this, and we're not. We're one of the very, very few outlets out there, or the only outlet that I know of that is not towing the company line and is not infiltrated by government officials. And it's that you're either on top or you're on the bottom when it comes to control of the weapons of war and the control of the money. And until our faction, our lawful faction, our bloodline is and our birthright is restored, we won't stop fighting, and we don't fight alongside of those who are lining their pockets through this criminal usury system. So
I would like to get a bit. I would like to get a bit more in a moment into the global economic engineering, economic warfare, and such. But when we have another caller, I'd like to at least initially hear from, see what they had, perhaps to ask your thoughts on. We have 415 in California. Hello, thank you for calling in.
Hi, my name's Clifford. I've also done work with the militia. So yeah, I just wanted to just add that, yeah, this entire system is criminal. And you were going to mention a professor, like, I'm not sure if you were going to mention Kevin Barrett, but he is also a government agent, or Ken O'Keefe. He's not a professor, but it sounded like you might have been saying Ken. They're all government agents. I've met Ken O'Keefe. He is certainly a government agent. He was scheduled to come to this talk in Berkeley a couple years ago. He was extremely late, over a half an hour late, and he just did this sort of leading question thing where he just sort of teased information. And once again, as Chris said, we're serious about this. We're not here to try to tantalize or titillate people. We're not trying to, what kind of secrets do you think they have in the deep end? We're here to get this done. We're not here to talk about, like, what technologies could they be hiding? We're here to find out by neutralizing these criminals. That's all I really had to say.
right, yeah,
That's great.
couldn't agree more.
Chris,
Yeah,
if you would, Chris, if you would elaborate on this global economic engineering you hint at. We hear so much about the manipulations, a lot of economic warfare, and we're told so much lately of future economic shifts, a Eurasian sort of shift. But we are seeing a lot of systems parallel to the United States dollar SWIFT system for international trade. China's all set up and wheeling and dealing already. Russia, I understand, is trying to set one up as well in the current.
well, that's true, Richard. But they're still using the original SWIFT system right now. And when it transfers into something else, they won't shut off the SWIFT system until they've got something where they can get money from the United States, Canada, Western Europe. I mean, when trade deals go sour with the United States, it's not like our products stop being made in China. It's not like Chinese companies stop buying out quote unquote American companies. What I know is there's something called the Bank for International Settlements. That is the central bank of all the central banks, and it controls the capitalization rates and all of the regulation, all of the regulatory aspects of the Federal Reserve Bank, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of China, the Bank of Russia, all the central banks of the world. I actually have a list of all the central banks that are controlled by the Bank for International Settlements, and therefore use the SWIFT system. It's here. Let me find it in my book. I mean, I won't read them all, but it's a lot. You know, I'll skip around. Bank of Algeria, Bank of Argentina, Bank of Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Brazil, Bulgaria, People's Bank of China, Central Bank of Chile. Let's see where. Bank of Greece, Deutsche Bundesbank, Bank of France, Bank of Luxembourg, National Bank of Poland, National Bank of Romania, Central Bank of the Russian Federation, and it goes on. Bank of Japan, There's not one country, and the countries, as we mentioned before, that are not. There's only three. North Korea, Iran, and Cuba. And all of those countries, they only get money from the central banks that are controlled by the Bank for International Settlements. And when we're talking about money laundering, financing warfare, the Bank for International Settlements was formed in 1930, I believe, through something called the Dawes Act, and that was allegedly to pay reparations from Germany, from the government of Germany, to the United States, to England, to France, etc. But basically all it did was it financed building up the war machine of Germany, France, the United States, England, Japan, etc. And during the war, it was operating in its headquarters, still current headquarters, in Basel, Switzerland, right on the German border, every day. And all it did was served as a clearinghouse to run bank transfers between Berlin and New York and London and Naples and all the access and all the allied countries. And it was run by an American named Thomas McKitterick. So it just financed both sides of World War II. And there were Germans meeting every day with Americans and Brits and Japanese every day in Basel, Switzerland. This is just a financial Ponzi scheme. It's just, it works not just for financial purposes, for depopulation purposes, to create refugee crisis, to create the state of Israel, which was the worst result out of World War II. And who did that? Well, the owners of the Bank for International Settlements, the Rothschild family, the Warburg family.
Well, of course, leaders of countries are going to accept money from a lot of these international banks. It's just necessary when you're trying to get things done in a nation. So I'm not entirely convinced that on its own shows that all of the players in World War II were on the same globalist side, so to speak.
Let's hold on.
Transfer agreement. How about the transfer agreement?
Yeah, what about the?
Well, I'm aware of that.
But hold on a second. So Richard, I'm just trying to figure out.
When I mentioned a Eurasian shift toward the future, I'm really not trying to touch on the past with my economic question for you. It was more, do you see the future having the U.S. and possibly Europe lose some of our first world living standards?
It's already happened. It's definitely already happened.
Okay, and you see China and Russia, even possibly India, Pakistan, Israel, a lot of these countries aligned already to kind of exclude the U.S. once it's.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think that's impossible. They don't exclude anybody. They take the money from everybody. Still right now, this is what our claim is. Our claim is this is our country. And our country also, if these imposter so-called Jews, self-proclaimed Jews that are not Jews, can have dual citizenship, why don't we have dual citizenship? Because every place that we operate, every place that where our ancestors are from, is the United States. The property's still, worth more money in the United States than it is any other place. Same London. It's still the most valuable area. It's the most valuable land. So what I'm saying is that all the governments of the world, going back to World War II and beforehand, they're all working together. There are no good wars. They're always funded and manipulated on every level, that so much so that it's very, very obvious, going back before World War II, but especially World War II, that all the money controls everything. So you say, yeah, money's great. Hey, yeah, I'll take your money. Oh, but the international banking cartel doesn't just say, okay, yeah, you want money, we'll give money to the Axis. Yeah, they want money, so they'll take money, and then we'll give it to the Allies too, But yeah, they're both what? Acting on their own? No. No, they're the money controls everything. And they always finance all sides of all wars. Always. They never don't do that. There's not once when it ever has not happened like that. So, knowing that God made man warlike, that war will never end, that our enemies have us over a barrel with the threats of numerous extinction level events / weapons to be used against us, to me, the only thing to think about is how to gain control of those weapons, and what matters besides that? Nothing. Nothing matters besides that. So, we don't wish to just abolish this American government. We wish to abolish and execute all government officials in America. We wish to do the same with Putin and Xi Jinping and every other government official around the world right now that does not follow or facilitate our plans, because that's what the law says. And it doesn't matter how far-fetched this idea is, it's the only solution. So when you have one and only solution, that's the only thing that matters. Unless folks want to keep seeing things get worse. Traffic's worse. Taxes worse. Attacks on free speech worse. Money in people's pockets after a 40-hour work week worse. The biggest gap between the rich and the poor in 50 years. That's the worst economy. That's not a good economy. That's the worst economy. So, I just like to make myself clear.
Okay, I was going to ask the perspective you have on, well, the United Nations' role in this. We've heard so much about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, all of this supranational doctrine that's getting handed down to us. But, I mean, you're convinced that all of the nations were on the same side as far as the leaders.
Absolutely. How could they not be? If they weren't on the same side, they'd be dead.
So, Iran, the leader of Iran, do you think he's a legitimate opposition right now? Or do you think that's a puppet?
It's very hard to say. I mean, I don't think it's that simple. One thing I think is very funny is I went on Press TV a couple years ago and started talking about Jeffrey Epstein and how all the I did this on several outlets owned by the Iranian government, about how Jeffrey Epstein is controlling and blackmailing all of the Western figures, and probably Eastern as well, in politics, media, sports, entertainment, music, movies, etc., banking, and they're all compromised. So they do whatever any of these folks who are telling them what to do say. It's really that simple. And if you look at it, okay, what just happened geopolitically, if you follow the, what folks say is that, oh, wow, look at what the U.S. did. They just handed everything over in Syria over to Iran, over to Turkey, and over to Russia. Oh, that's the last thing that they wanted to do. But if it's the last thing that they wanted to do, it happened. So either they are incompetent to levels of absurdity that the human mind has a difficult time wrapping its head around, or they're all working together.
I'd like to talk more about this global power structure, the roles, and just the way you see these players being linked. But we have another caller on the line, actually. This is a gentleman who's just recently joined our hosts here at Revision Media. You might be familiar with him from prior networks as well. We have Mike V. Sledge on the line. Hello, Mike.
Hey, great show, Chris. Good to hear from you, man.
Hey,
I've
nice
heard
to hear
you in
from
a
you,
while,
Mike.
and I think you're doing a great job. And I agree as well that what you're saying about the banking cartels, that pretty much the central banks pretty much control basically all of the major players in global finance, including China, which I recently did a show on, the Cathing Jews, and the history of how they took over the banking system going back to the 1600s in China. But I would ask you, and by the way, I know you're from Virginia. It's not Virginia, it's Virginia. As a southerner myself from Georgia.
Right on. All right. Yeah. My apologies for the mispronunciation.
I'm just joking around, man.
Yeah, I know.
But, one thing I would like to get your comment on is Heinz Solomon and his funding through Robert Morris. He was a Polish Jew who actually was the central banker for the American Revolution, that was the banking apparatus behind the foundation of the original 13 colonies. I'd be interested on your opinion on that, because basically he was in New York, and he worked with Robert Morris, who was the newly appointed superintendent for finance for the 13 colonies. And from 1781 to 84, Heinz Solomon's fundraising and personal lending helped provide over $650,000 back then, which would be almost $18 million today, if you recalculate it, to George Washington in the original American Revolution War effort. So, I mean, I'm kind of interested in your opinion on that, because it seems like from the very beginning you had a Jewish banking faction who was directly involved in the original 13 colonies.
Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't that compromise the whole thing from the very fucking beginning in the first place?
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. It certainly was. It certainly was compromised. Before that point. I mean, you go back and look, I guess, from what was it, 12 end of the 13th century, when King Edward I expelled the Jews out of England, until what was it, the English Civil War, when the parliamentary faction headed by Cromwell brought them back in. Yeah, they were operating, and they were operating in the U.S. in the colonies, I should say, from the jump. New York, New Amsterdam, the Dutch masters, that's where a big faction of Jews moved. So then you get the William of Orange versus the Jacobites. I mean, it's a really complex thing, but yeah, definitely, I couldn't agree more. They have been there with their banking interests from the beginning, and that's why they got expelled from all these countries more than any of the other reasons, is because of their usury, and because they bankrupt the structure, and after a certain amount of time, they bankrupted them and had so much leverage over the legitimate ruling royal families of Europe that these bloodlines of our ancestors couldn't get rid of them anymore.
Yep.
Because the weapons are paid for by the money, and once you got the money, you got all the weapons. That's why we don't just say, hey, we want control of the weapons of war, because you have to have the money to pay for the weapons.
Absolutely. And that would be, going back to the intent of the question I'm asking, would be, although I think the original intent of the American Constitution was probably one of the best political documents that we've seen, based upon common law, going back to the original European legal foundation. But it seems to me that a lot of people, so I would be curious in your views. I think personally that the Constitution had the original Constitution in the original foundation of 13 colonies already have the cyanide incorporated in it, with the ability to amend the way they have been able to amend it so easily.
True.
And I'd be interested on what you think should be our goal for the future when, because I do believe we will reclaim our land here in the United States, and I'd be interested in what you think our new document should look like, and because it's going to have to be stripped, because at this point, the original Constitution is totally compromised completely with all the amendments. So,
Well, what I would say to that is number one, I like to focus on what the Constitution is, and the Constitution, number one, to me, is the rules for my servants. It's either the rules for my servants or it's not working properly. So when you read things in the Constitution until you get to the 13th and the 14th Amendment, I can find fault with it, but I can also live with it, because we the people, we the legitimate ruling bloodline of the people of God from the Bible, the people of God descended from the royal houses of Europe, we ordain this government. So when we ordain it, we create it. So, you can't, and there's something in the Constitution which says, hey, you can't, if something is unconstitutional, you can't put it into law. So when somebody can write something on whatever sort of official document, get it notarized and say, tomorrow the sky is going to be, yellow and the sun's going to be blue. They can say it all they want, but it doesn't make it so. It doesn't make it so. So my point is, we the people, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you, man.
I'll just finish up real quick. My apologies. We ordain this government. So, and this is part of getting into what we were going to talk about, political philosophy. I don't agree or abide by anything that's against my own best interest. And I believe I have a higher standing than those who wish to impose their will on me. And how do I know that? Well, I know more about the law, and then it's something added to that. It's something added to the basis of all the English common law. And that is, who's it for? Who's this to benefit? It's meant to benefit the monarch in a system that must be restored. We must restore the system of rule by nobility. It goes back to our tribal beginnings, to the chieftains and the high kings of Ireland and the high kings of Scotland and the chieftains of the Celtic people, and before that, the pharaonic line that exodus out of Egypt, went to the Mediterranean, and then came through the Pillars of Hercules to the Iberian Peninsula, to the Iberian Islands. This is our birthright, and we claim it.
I can't say I disagree with you at all. Going back to another topic I'd like to ask you about, because you're very well educated on these topics, is the Treaty of Paris, which was signed on September 3rd, 1783, and actually was the Treaty of Paris actually ended the Revolutionary War.
Mm-hmm.
But it put Americas in a war debt to France and the central banking cartel in France at the time.
Right.
And it was never properly repaid. And so I think, and of course, which was part of the beginning of leading to the French Revolution and the Jacobites and all that, which I find very interesting as well. We know who they were behind the French Revolution. But so, I believe that the big illusion and the big delusion is that the original Constitution or even the Articles of the Confederation were compromised from the very beginning, and they were already controlled by a central banking design. And they knew that we people in the colonies at the time were getting restless. We were tired of the seizure of our profits and our property and all this kind of thing. And they knew they had to have this kind of controlled demolition, I call it, which I think was the American Revolution, which seems to me was actually financed through Chaim Solomon from the very beginning, and then we were indebted to Europe, the same European banking cartels from the very beginning, and that debt was never repaid. And then that leads us down the road, I think, to the War of 1812, which I find very interesting, which led to the burning down of Washington and the bringing about of the bar. Titles of nobility you mentioned earlier. Esquire was not originally allowed in this country. If you had a title of nobility, you couldn't hold power, you couldn't hold office. Our legal system today under the bar, the British Accredited Registry, and this was really set up after Cromwell. I think this whole thing here in the country was compromised from the very beginning. So anyway,
Yeah.
I love listening to you. I think you're, yeah.
Hey, gentlemen, listen, I'd really like to respond to that. It's David, because see, I'm very aware that from the beginning that because see already you got to understand the colonies were prospering because the colonists, especially our English ancestors, were trying to escape what was going on in Europe, which is everything we're talking about tonight, and I can really see how the revolution was definitely a way for the unlawful crown, the fake royalty, to try to get its paws, its grip, back on the people who were trying to escape.
Hey, let's get into that too, because I think there's an article in this about factions, because what I always know is that there's always factions. Every single war has factions. Go back to the Russian Revolution. There were 17 armed factions, and that's what we're counting on. We're keeping our powder dry. We wish to see, our enemies eliminate each other, and we wish to strategically win in every sort of way. So there's always factions, including a faction that offered, I forget which Prussian prince it was, but it was a Prussian prince to be the monarch of the United States of America. So there were factions within the United States of America that didn't just put out something about titles of nobility as kind of a throwaway line that they never abided by in the first place. There were folks within the Continental Congress originally who were offered I believe it was Prince Frederick, to be the monarch of the United States. It was either Henry or Frederick. I'm not sure. If anybody can help me out with that, I apologize for.
I believe it was Frederick, Chris. I believe it was Frederick. I'm not 100% sure, but I
Okay.
believe you're correct on that.
Okay, so but in any event, it's not a secret. It's not something that's made up. It was something that I believe that the Prussian prince demurred on, and that's how it ended. That happens all the time, and I think that there are factions. So I agree with Mike, and I couldn't agree more. And I think that there are different factions that are always fighting for different reasons. I mean, there was a huge faction in the United States when I look back at my own ancestry that was captured in war in Ireland and Scotland by the English and sent to the United States, where they were in shackles for a few years and then just became Americans. And they had their reasons for fighting the English. And, there's always double agents, double crossers. But what I like to tell to everyone is that when you reach a certain point, especially in this modern day system, I can only guess or use publicly available, irrefutable, sources and evidence for the past. But what I see with my own eyes right in front of me is pretty obvious. I mean, think about it this way. Talk about, Iranian TV. When I would go on Iranian TV, I would go up to Washington, D.C. and go in the studio in the Christian Broadcasting Network building in the middle of the District of Columbia to do what? To talk to, Max Kaiser on a satellite who's in London or Paris, whichever, place he's in at that given time. So how, if these guys are such, or I'll film things talking about the lawful abolition of the United States government and the Virginia state government sitting in the basement of the General Assembly building in Richmond, Virginia, getting a satellite feed from public broadcasting to Tehran. So all this stuff about these guys being opposed, it can't work like that. It could never work like that. If
I agree, Chris.
If these guys were really opposed to themselves, they would be truly engaged in war with one another. And folks like these compromised guys that like to rape children being the only choice we have to watch on TV or to be in charge of our government or be in charge of our money supply or be in charge of listening to all their music on the radio or whatever. I refute all that. I say I reject it. I reject everything about this society and I know that this government is waging war against me, so I wish for death to come to my enemies. And that's what I work towards in a lawful and legal manner. And I'm very careful about that, despite the fact that many of these individuals that belong in front of a firing squad for their treason have actually attempted to not just injure me, but have attempted to kill me and disappeared me into a jail system that is completely unlawful. So, I mean, that's it. It's time. It's time to abolish this government. And we say, hey, if you vote, you're guilty of treason. And those who don't vote, by not voting, you support us.
We have another caller who joined us.
Yeah, I'm about to go ahead and head out. Richard, but I'm still listening off the call. Great job, Chris. I really respect what you do, and it's a very good show. And it was nice talking to you, man. Take care, brother.
Hey, God bless. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Mike. So we have another caller. Before we get back into these other topics a little deeper, I'd like to see if he has a question about militias in general, your interpretation, or militia perhaps you belong to. We have Johnny Ceballos in Texas. He's with Liberty Light News, his own media platform. Johnny, hello.
Thank you, Richard. Hello. Yeah, I was interested on some of the topics, just to go back a bit. I was hoping Mike Welch would stay on, but I guess he had to go. It was tying the two countries together of Britain and America. So maybe you guys could have some insight on how much of a correlate that the Magna Carta and the Constitution have as to overlapping these two countries, and the Constitutional Congress of this, the trading between the two countries.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I agree. I'm glad you brought up Magna Carta because that is one of the things I would say. The Magna Carta to me is just as important, if not more so important than any of the American documents to me, because it just is. It's more of the basis of what I believe, and that is rule by legitimate divine right. I believe in the divine right of kings. I believe that the nobility of Europe is divinely put on this planet to rule. And so yeah, I agree with the Magna Carta. Under the Magna Carta, there are strict rules on Jews, and Jews under the system of law during the Plantagenet kings of England, and after that point, it was really it didn't matter because after Edward I, which came, I guess, in the middle of the Plantagenet rule of England. They were out of England, and before that, they were property and chattel of the king. So they couldn't get too far out of control, and so I believe that that's a big thing that must be put back into place. Is that individuals like myself must have 100% control over all of these individuals with this particular bloodline, because I believe that they are naturally, and so does every rational leader in the history of humanity. They know and have stated that this ethnic bloodline that folks miscall today Jews, these Khazarian Southern Europeans, that's what they are. They must be watched, or else if they're let to act on their own devices, it's hell on earth. And the only way to destroy hell on earth is to extremely limit the amount of influence that this particular bloodline has, and to restore the rightful rulers. Again, as we're talking about, I know how things work, so I wouldn't agree to anything that puts me in a position of slavery. And everything except for exactly what we're talking about puts myself and everyone else who's hearing us talk, it puts us in a position of slavery. And so, yeah, I oppose that in every way. Yeah, restore the Magna Carta. That would result in the execution of all government officials in every place in the world, including all millionaires and billionaires, which is what we're advocating more than anything else. Because that is who is engaging in war against us. It's very simple. Very, very simple.
Definitely. I agree, yeah. Well, stick around, Johnny, if you have any other questions. We're going to get more into Chris's views on militia philosophy, and also discuss his Militia Handbook, which he's written. But, Chris, would you like to discuss a bit of what I touched on earlier regarding the role of the United Nations and just all of these plans we hear about, like these agendas, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030.
Yeah. Yeah, what aspect? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Richard.
What do you see as the overall plan? I mean, it seems to be mostly focused on Europe and the United States, with most of what they want to make changes in, but it benefits some other countries. The impression I have is a sort of leveling of the playing field and just control, perhaps at the end of the day. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, we have so much talk of global digital currencies, global digital identification being required more and more, social credit scores, all of this that could get rolled out on a global scale, losing sovereignty more and more. But then, of course, we see the EU dissolving to some extent, as far as at least the member states' faith in it, and how much so many want to break away. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the
Well,
UN?
yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. One thing I would say right now, even as we speak, years, and I predicted this back when Brexit took place, years before Brexit, years before England, and I mean there were many countries talking about getting out of the EU. But as we speak right now, England, the UK, the so-called UK, is still a part of the European Union. And all of these countries are a part of the United Nations, which matters much more than a smaller faction within it. I mean, there's so many different, factions. NATO's a faction, the Silk Road collective, the what do they call it? The BRICS countries. They're little factions, but they're all controlled by the same overarching faction. So who's in charge? Who's in charge of the EU and the United States? Well, I saw Leon Panetta on TV right before we went to air, and I remember Jeff Sessions, when he was a senator, asking about the United States military, and Panetta was then the defense secretary. This was at a recorded Senate subcommittee hearing, saying it's not the Congress that controls the United States military. It's NATO or the UN, and that when they take orders from NATO or the UN, then if they feel like it, the United States military at that point might inform Congress about what happens. So my point in this is, number one, the UK is still in years after the vote to get out. The UK is still a part of the European Union. The deal that they will make will not remove them from the European Union. Whether they say it's a Brexit, deal, whether they say it's a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit or anything else, they'll still be a part of the European Union. And the European Union is insignificant when you have much larger and more important institutions like the Bank for International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the UN, and the SWIFT system. So all those things supersede these little factions that folks like to get distracted with, because something more powerful and more centralized controls all the countries, not just a regional faction. So I believe that, UN Agenda 21 is underway. That's everything that you see. From these fake shootings to these direct energy weapon fires and massive power outages in California, that this is, when you start talking about theaters of war, there are theaters of war here in the United States, and you can't refute it. The second second unit of the United States Marine Corps, the second division, I should say, located at Camp Lejeune, they were sent to California about a month before all this power outage, all these fires, and then the United States Marine Corps is activated within CONUS base, which is Continental United States Base. They're operating, doing something called unconventional warfare exercises. So this weather warfare that we're getting.
California, they're preparing to crank up the police state however much they need to match the growing unrest of the populace.
Right.
That's essentially they're getting their pieces in order for the next possible move and stages.
Right.
So they have to deploy all this military because the people here are getting unrest with more people are catching on. There are days I walk by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco and I'll just say, that institution needs to be seized and abolished. And I'll hear people say, that's absolutely right. So the worm is turning and they're getting prepared to react.
Right. That's why they've done all these gun grabs, because they see what's going on in Spain. They see what's going on in Hong Kong. They see what's going on in South America, and they know that we're not immune to getting pissed off and going out on the streets. And we have guns, and they don't have guns there. But evidently they are firebombing police cars, which I tip my cap to the protesters in Hong Kong, and I support them as long as what they wish is for the execution of all Chinese government officials and all Hong Kong government officials. And if they do everything leading up to that, I support them up to that point. I certainly support them fighting back against the police, who all are guilty of treason, and under any sort of legitimate human rights, all police in Hong Kong would be executed. And that's what we wish to forward. And they say, well, how are you going to do this? And we say, however it has to get done. They don't go like, okay, well, we have a free system. How are we gonna enslave these people who are born free on God's green earth? They do it until they get it right. They do it however it has to get it done. And I have healthy respect for my enemy. They wish to have me dead, and I wish to have them dead. And that's what I'm working towards every day. That's warfare.
What do you see as a strategy? I mean, your perspective toward the militia role. You make it sound like if we get organized enough, we should have a revolution, overthrow the federal government, and
No. Abolish the federal government. Abolish, because that's what it says. That's what it says in the law.
Right.
That's what it says in the law.
Bureaucracy should never have existed to begin with.
Right. And my answer to that is, first, what do you do? Like, okay, so we have the legal rights. We're correct. We have the facts and the procedure and the law on our side. So they are operating completely against the law when they do everything that they get away with. So when we know when we have right on our side, number one, besides just the statement, how do we get this done however it has to get done, which is the most important way, however it has to get done, there's countless numbers of strategies and tactics and so forth. But the first step is making a lawful claim, which is all we're doing. All we're doing is making a lawful claim. We say, hey, Donald Trump belongs in front of a firing squad. So does Hillary Clinton and George H.W. Bush and he's dead. George W. Bush and every other president and every other elected official. They say, oh, you can't say that. Yeah, you can. They're guilty of treason. Well, what is their treason? 9/11. Sandy Hook.
Johnny, did you have something else you were trying to ask, Chris?
No, not really. It's more of a compliment kind of side thing, but yeah, it's interesting looking at this. Makes you wonder why even President Trump tried to get rid of the military out of California and put them on the borders, and then now they're bringing in the Marines. That was news to me, what he just said.
Well, yeah, you can check it out. I made a couple videos of it about it on the Militia Intelligence Report #2 YouTube page. That's another aspect of this, which is completely disgusting, because we've been through over a dozen YouTube pages with our information, just putting facts out there and having them be removed. But yeah, you can still find it there. The 2nd Marine Division is doing their largest drill, largest exercise, I should say, in a decade. And they headed from Camp Lejeune to, I think, 29 Palms, California. And then the United States Marine Corps has been activated and deployed inside the continental United States. Now, folks attacked me by saying, hey, this has been going on since 2014. Exactly my point. They get rid of old orders and start new orders, but it's been going on since 2011. This is all part of something called hold on a second. Sorry, lost my continuity of operations, continuity of government. So these are operations of the Department of Homeland Security. I mean, we go through step by step in the Militia Handbook on how to get this done. I mean, I've done this by myself. There was a well-known incident, especially around here, at a Richmond City Council meeting. And basically, I was a scheduled speaker at a Richmond City Council meeting, and they had my seat that I normally sit in, which is right in front of the television camera, and they blocked that off. So I went and sat in the media section, which is up against the wall, armed with everybody to their back to me. Now I had the strategic advantage over everyone. What is a militarily strategic advantage? Whatever that is, that's what we must have. So, they like to get us caught up in all these things about, oh, exactly what are you going to do? Oh, tell us all your plan. It's pretty simple. Outflank your enemy with deadly force. That's the plan. How do you get in charge? How do you regain your power in government? Outflank your enemy with deadly force. It's simple as that.
Ideally, superior deadly.
Yeah, superior deadly force. That's the other thing about war. We don't want to fight a war so we kill our enemies and we get killed ourselves. No. That's not what we want. We wish to destroy and neutralize our enemy while remaining safe and actually gaining authority and power and money out of that. Why? Because that's the rules of war, and that's what they're doing to us. And why would we fight back in any different way other than the way that they have surrounded and neutralized the masses in this country and every other country in the world? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to do anything that doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to do...
read out in your book that you wrote.
Which part, David? I got it right here. Which part?
Yeah, I wanted to get into that. Please, go ahead. Well, real quick, because everybody asks, what's the solution? What do we do? Well, as members of the militia, it is the duty of all not only to arm themselves with guns, but more importantly, wisdom and a video camera. Now, the first step in dealing with corporate or government entity is to record and disseminate all interactions, hold them accountable, in other words, establishing the criminal nature of government and identifying individuals engaged in crimes against people is essential. The government has targeted lawful men and women in this country. Now, again, I'd like to... I lost the main part.
David, what page is that on?
I'm on 36. You can probably turn right to it.
Okay.
Well, anyway, okay, this is the part I wanted to read. Now, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week surveillance on every government official in every county or parish. If you live in Louisiana, city, state, the militia must have a force that can and will arrest those who hold the highest positions in government, along with the top corporate government banking leaders who benefit from the criminal system. To initiate this policy is the only way to generate freedom. The people must require the government to comply with the complete monitoring of their actions. Names, addresses, and current locations of all leaders must be available to the public. Periodic detentions and broadcast debriefings of military, banking, government, and corporate leaders will enable public oversight of the government. And we will have the ability to directly be in contact with our servants. So again, Chris, it's what you say. For every DHS agent, for every military personnel, for every cop, there's going to be 4 militia members watching them 24 hours a day. And eventually, all these positions like the FBI, the military, the DHS, the cops, they'll all belong to the militia, and they won't have criminals in charge of them. That's the problem right now, like we were talking about the Magna Carta earlier. The Magna Carta, along with the constitutional common law, puts in power what you would call the rightful chosen people by natural law and the authority of God. Whatever you believe in, whatever language you go by, that's the highest authority. The highest authority to do good. That's what we're after. Right now, the safety of the innocent and the concerns of individuals are not taken into effect because the Constitution and Magna Carta are being violated. The bureaucrats. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, here, this is exactly from the book. unlike our enemy, which is the, Zionist, Jewish, Khazarian, whatever you want to call it, government, we will not target the innocent, nor will we use their satanic abuse of children. They abuse adults as well. We will use all lawful tactics, including constitutionally mandated capital punishment against those who choose to continue forwarding the government-sponsored child abuse. So that would be Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Alec Baldwin, Mick Jagger, Naomi Campbell. I mean, you can't go through all the list of Epstein, Ehud Baruch, whatever. The government has made clear they are unlawfully...
Here's the general rule of thumb. The more you're benefiting from this system, the sooner and harder we go after you.
Exactly. The government has made clear they are unlawfully spying on the people. The militia, in response, will expand our video surveillance of corporate and government leaders. That's what I do. That's what some other people do as well. But if 5 people did that in every single town, they would have a difficult time running any government meetings anywhere, at any time. And they would be very exposed, but that's not happening. But it would be very easy, very, very easy for it to happen. Not only would the militia stake out and record our enemies while lawfully carrying firearms, we will open source the names and addresses of our surveillance targets. So this is all very specific strategy. It's overarching strategy, but it's the only kind of strategy that will work. We will open source the names and addresses of our surveillance targets to the body of the people. Through current technology, we have the capacity to monitor those who give the orders for the institutions that control government 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In every county, city, and state, the militia must have a force that can and will arrest those who hold the highest positions in government, along with the top corporate banking leaders who benefit from the criminal system. To initiate this policy, which is the only way to guarantee freedom, the people must require government to comply. So, the government is our servants. So, the number one step, we're the bosses, they're the servants, we give the orders, they must comply. It doesn't say like, oh, well, government is magistrates of the people and must it be all times amenable to them. Caveat, doesn't add a caveat saying, unless one guy was voted into office and then his party was voted in and then people voted to take away everybody's rights and to go to war against another country and kill children for oil that's not going to cut our oil costs. It's going to increase our gas prices, but it's going to make millionaires and billionaires richer. It doesn't say that in the Constitution. It says government magistrates are servants of the people and must at all times be amenable. What does that mean? We asked for something and they must comply. We require something of them and they must comply. With
compromise as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They must.
Question for you, if I may. What would protect the militia or the 3%? How would that go about? Because this is a very loaded question, but how does that go about?
I'm not interested in 3% of the population. No, I'm not interested in ruling along with 3% of the population. That 3% thing, that's a government psyop. It means nothing. They're as obvious as the Oath Keepers, the Malheur militia. Those guys are all well-paid feds. And there's nothing else to them. Whatever it has to take. If the government can choose whether to comply with our orders or not, at that point, whether they decide, to listen to us or not, it's game over at that point. So, I don't know, we do things like surround police with guns and then let them go. We surrounded you. We have guns. We're filming this. Now you can go. Obviously, we can't win a pitched battle against the 2nd Marine Division on the streets of California. However, we can block the Federal Reserve Bank from opening in every one of the locations around the United States. Is that a better idea than going to a closed bathroom, federally run bathroom in the middle of Oregon? Is that a better or worse idea than that?
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm observing this. I've thought about it myself as a constitutional, so this is interesting hearing his point of take on that.
It's just warfare.
I have another question messaged in from Mike Sledge for you, Chris. Mike says, regarding 29 Palms, ask Chris about Operation Garden Plot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Garden Plot. Yeah, we've covered that before. I think that's just a larger part of Operation Conus Base. Larger part of continuity of operations, continuity of government, and I mean it fits in with Agenda 21. Let me see. I gotta look that up to find out exactly what Operation Garden Plot is. 1992. Here's the PDF. Operation Garden Plot. Just gonna look it up to get a better idea. Refers to a general United States Army and National Guard plan designed to respond to major domestic civil disturbances within the U.S. was developed to respond to civil disorders. It's been going on since the 60s. Yeah, that this is, the police are an occupying army. The United States military is engaged in war against the United States. And when we see things like, quotes in documents like this, what do you call it? The activation of the United States Marine Corps to work with the police and the Air Force, Navy, and Army, National Guard. It's just so very obvious that that's what's going on here. That you mentioned it, Richard, about 25 or 30 minutes ago. Everything the government does is population control. That's what they do. Government is a two-dimensional creation of man. God creates man and man creates government. God is to man as man is to government. And we can never be made servants by our two-dimensional creation. So yeah, Operation Garden Plot is definitely a key point. If you're not familiar with Operation Garden Plot, thanks to Mike Sledge for bringing it up. You should look it up. It is certainly operational now. They've operationalized Conus Base.
Another word Mike Sledge is aware that martial law isn't something it's already here. We've been living under it. Only most are not meant to see it. And again,
It just changes its scale and intensity.
yeah, that's right, Clifford. Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, that's all Garden Plot was. And it says right here, well, first it started after allegedly the Watts riots, reactivated in 1992 during the Watts riots again. And now it says the COP plan 2502 following the September 11th attack. So yeah, I mean, this is what we're doing right now. We're holding court. We as the militia, we don't have to hold court in some fancy federal building where some black robed man hands down sentencing. No, we hand down sentencing as we the people. Now, we may not have right now at the moment structures and ability to jail individuals if we were to actually surround them, but that's what our aim is. We look to separate from what's going on. And in any way we can, and we're going to start with the models that our ancestors have given us before because they stand to the test of time. Natural law and God's law work.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this is all about restoring the natural law, restoring the natural order, and you know, ripping to shreds all of their arguments against it, because it's legion. Their arguments are legion. They're endless. The way that the way the devil, which is just meaning the adversary of God, which means the adversary of the natural order, the deception of the devil is infinite. The amount of lies that the synagogue of Satan can tell you, it's infinite. There's only one truth, and that's what we're staking our claim on.
Well, can you give us a full description of your book, the Militia Handbook?
Yeah. I'll just read. Let me see if I can read at the back. This book offers. This is the Militia Handbook. I'm just reading off the back. Offers a revolutionary new look at the most comprehensive understanding of the present political agenda. Readers will find valuable information and evidence to assist people transform their lives, beliefs, and that's it. I mean, this book is, maybe if we read the first page. The Zionist shadow government is at war with the people. Like all other military conflicts, it is a war conducted by the secretive institutions that control government. In order to save the planet, we must take decisive actions to depose the hidden power structure. This manual will give instructions for how people can fight back against our common enemy using strategies to neutralize the criminals that enslave the planet. I guess that's a pretty good description. I like to say things like, as for myself, speaking for myself, for me, I keep it simple, stupid, because I don't know these things because I'm so smart and I'm such a genius. This stuff is obvious when you just keep everything simple. Money controls everything. You know, people are socially controlled and engineered through the threat of violence, and therefore those are the only two operative political levers of power that mean anything. When you talk about anything other than control of money and control of guns, everything else pales in comparison. Every single thing else. So that's our philosophy. That's the fact. We don't even know. I mean, I have a hard time listening to a lot of alternative media and even mainstream media, because they talk about so many other things that don't matter at all. And I just can't abide by that. Nothing else matters but money and guns when it comes to politics. Nothing else matters.
Now, if I may ask this question, when you say Zionist, are you talking about international banking? You're saying some of this is controlled by, you were mentioning earlier in your episode, these wars are started by the banking system? Would that be a part of that?
That's what runs everything, is the international banking cartel. I mean, and I don't believe you can separate the international banking cartel from the international military-industrial complex. It's one and the same. So yeah, absolutely. The international banking cartel controls the world. Controls all world governments.
They're one and the same, and it shows you what the agenda is. Because once you control the money, then you say, oh, we control the money, we can control anything else. What's the first thing we get? Oh, the guns. So that tells you the agenda is total war. When the first thing they go is for the guns, then the next, say, the way people take care of themselves and the way people raise their children, you know the agenda is full spectrum dominant. So
Right.
once again, it's very obvious to anyone who has working brain cells and does not have a compulsion to lie to themselves. So then the only thing you do once you realize what's going on is to do something about it.
Right. That's another thing. Folks go like, well, what are we supposed to do? Oh, what are we supposed to do? We tell them every step of the way what to do. And the first thing to say is something rather than nothing. That's the first step. But then it becomes like everything else. It's like, how do you teach somebody how to ride a bike? Just do it. You just do it. Not everybody's going to win the Tour de France, just because they learned how to ride a bike. So, we're not interested in just anybody who knows how to ride a bike. We're interested in those who are willing to challenge themselves and know how to do things and do things well. Not just any old person who's like, oh, I'm interested in this stuff. Oh, I keep screwing up. Oh, I keep screwing up stuff for the group. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, yeah, I'm lying about this. Oh, I'm putting misinformation out about that. Oh, yeah, the international banking cartel's bad and jewelry's bad, but Donald Trump is great. We're not interested in aligning ourselves with huge numbers of folks. We like to keep our circles very small because it's not going to be the masses. I don't really have any respect for the masses. I don't. I don't wish them ill. I don't wish to steal from them. But I know that they're sheep and that I'm a shepherd. And so the shepherd carries a crook and a staff, and that's what I carry. So it's not like I wish ill from them. I wish to protect them, but they don't have the ability to protect themselves. It's always a small group of individuals that run things. And whether God's people are in charge or the synagogue of Satan are in charge, it's always going to be a small group of people. So I really don't care about the masses. I don't care about them at all.
You're part of the Constitutional Virginia Militia. Is this something that is non-localized then? Is it just many factions rather than a single faction? Just to answer that question, we are the only militia. We're the American militia. I'm the commander of the American militia, and there's only one militia, the Virginia militia, the Maryland militia. Those are just things that folks say. And some folks say, I'm the commander, because that's what I do. I command the militia, and no one on this green planet or blue planet or whatever color, green and blue planet can say that they have anything to do with the militia without our okay, without us saying that. They're imposters. We are the only militia. There's only one militia. We are it. And the commander of the militia, it doesn't have anything to do with anything other than the relationship to bloodline, through bloodline and genealogy, to the King of England. Who's the commander of the Virginia militia? The legitimate monarch of England, Ireland, and Scotland. Nothing else. Nothing else. Same with Freemasonry. Freemasonry is an absolute joke. When I hear these folks start talking about, oh, Freemasons did this and Freemasons did that, it doesn't mean a damn thing. Freemasonry started in 926 through the old York constitutions of Freemasonry. Where do I get this information? From a book. Mackey's Jurisprudence of Freemasonry. What is Freemasonry? It is an employment contract with the King of England. The King of England is not the Grand Master of Freemasonry. He doesn't even sully himself with that. A member of his family can summon all the Freemasons. What does that mean? Hey, if you're a knight, you're automatically a Freemason. Otherwise, you have to have some sort of skill. And what does that mean? You got to abide by whatever the king says, and if you don't, he gets to take all your property and put you in jail. That's Freemasonry. That's from the old York constitutions of 926. So this is pre-Plantagenet. This is the Saxon kings of England. And so obviously we know the Saxon kings of England, they're related to all the kings of Europe, not just France, Germany, Wales, Scotland. King Alfred is related
to the king of Poland, to the kings of Hungary, to the kings of the Russian people, the kings of the Ukrainians, etc., Romania, Bulgaria, etc., etc., etc. This is about bloodlines, and we stake the claim to it. We've got proof. We got proof. My Y-DNA is R-M222. That's the only, and there's about 2 million people with that Y-DNA haplogroup, but only those 2 million people, only those folks can be legitimate monarchs of the United Kingdom. That comes from the High Kings of Ireland, then it goes through the High Kings of Scotland, then through the Kings of Scotland to the Kings of the United Kingdom, through the Stuart line and many other, Gilchrist, Sinclair, Campbell, etc., etc., etc. We know this stuff backwards and forwards, and most folks, they don't know it. The people in charge, the persons in charge, they know about all this stuff, and they know that they're an imposter bloodline, and that when we are in charge, we'll put their heads on spikes, just like our ancestors did. There's no other way to solve this.
Chris, I want to reiterate on militia groups, because see what you said earlier about we're absolutely the only militia. Now, what I like to say is those guys, they can have all the militia patches and websites and funding all they want. They can fire as many rounds, buy as many camouflage fatigues, and call themselves the Constitutional Militia all day. But all they're doing is lying to the public, and they're lying to themselves, because the second that they don't follow behind what we're putting forward, then they're not acting on it. We're acting on everything that we're putting forward. Now, again, a lot of people try to say, well, what makes you the commander of this, or what makes you because we execute it. We execute these orders, and again, there's, not just from us, but there's absolute video proof all over the internet of not only me, but mostly Chris over the years that have executed such plans and said, hey, I'm going to use my authority as one of the people to let these authority figures, to let these criminals that allegedly run the government know that, hey, you're not abiding by the original agreement upon you as the servant. You have proven that you cannot handle this job. It's like your housekeeper. Does the housekeeper tell you how to clean your house? No, you're paying them money. Again, it's just a matter of do your job, or we're going to find somebody who can. And that's where abolish, or as some people like obfuscated, overthrow, but the right word is abolish the government. That's in the law. Even if we don't like it, if we don't like it for any reason, there doesn't have to be some rigged election or some vote put forward. It's, hey, we the people have decided we don't like this government or this leader, so we're going to find somebody who can do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. We're required to abolish this government at this point. It's a requirement. We don't have a choice on the matter. We either act in dishonor to the law, or we abolish this government. And I think that that's the key problem with all of this society, is every official acting in dishonor. Acting in dishonor. That's every single problem. Acting in dishonor, being deceptive, lying, obfuscating, not abiding by the rules set forward, moving the goalpost, whatever you will. Everything that every government official and every corporate official does is a crime. It's usury. The punishment under the King James Bible, which is the basis of the common law. This is our law book. Every common law based country country that abides by the common law, I should say, every country in the world that abides by the common law abides by the Bible. The common law of the United States is based on the King James Bible. And what does it say? Hath led forth upon usury? Shall he then live? He shall not. He shall surely die. He has done all these abominations to himself. The punishment for the basis of everything that goes on in the society, which is usury, is punishable by death and has been banned over the years by our culture for a majority of the time that our ancestors have been on this earth. So, usury was illegal. The bloodline, the criminal bloodline that engages in usury more than any other, they have been thrown out of our realm. And the practice was illegal. You can't engage in usury. One can't engage in usury. It is a crime. And now we find ourselves in 2019, and everything about society, everything that the government does, everything that every corporation does, is based on usury, which is compounding interest infinitely. So we don't abide by that because it's not in our best interest. We will never win. We will always lose. The result of usury is always slavery. It never ends any other way. So we stand on that. Usury is the basis of everything that's done in this society and everything this government does, and it is against our religion, and we are violently opposed to it.
Because usury will always end in slavery, the punishment for usury is death.
Absolutely. In the Bible, that's what it says.
You mentioned, and so has, I think multiple callers here have mentioned as well, there are a lot of militia groups out there who are controlled by government agents, are traps of sorts, are not genuine to your ideals, the Constitution, not loyal really, but they're as controlled sources really for someone to find first, for someone to go to first. How do you suggest people look out for these things? Do you have any suggestions of how people might vet groups if they're looking to find something to join rather than forming their own?
Well, militia is a political
networking with people.
Right.
I don't know how informal you consider this, or if you just consider this everyone ready with their weapons and knows each other. How does this work?
Well, what I would say is, number one, militia is the concept. It's a political ploy. It's a political weapon, and it's not necessarily a thing. Militia, as defined by the author of Virginia Declaration of Rights, George Mason, it's the entire body of the people trained to arms. And the militia is just basically the concept of those loyal to the legitimate ruling authority under the common law, which has to be based in our bloodline relations to the legitimate monarchs of Europe, especially England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, etc. That anything, as we said before, we've already kind of answered that question, because unless you do exactly what we say, you are not part of the militia. And who are we to say that? We're saying it. We're staking that claim. We have standing. What's our standing? Our standing is from the action that we've taken and from our bloodline relations to the kings of Europe. And so we're just saying, hey, the law, the way it was intended, is not working. The government is engaged in war against the people and the masses, which are separate. The people, just because you're part of the masses, just because you call yourself an American citizen, doesn't make you a part of the body of the people. Just because you're a white guy, quote unquote white. I'm not white, I'm ruddy. I'm ruddy. But
Yourself an American citizen, you're saying exactly you are not one of the people.
right, according to the 14th Amendment, or by saying that that you're an American citizen, you're stating that you are subject to a rogue government masquerading as the United States of America government. So, I mean, we can take it any way you want. Folks like to get into like, oh, the multiple constitutions of the United States of America, and that the United States is a corporation under the heading of the New York Federal Reserve. Whatever you want to say, we don't agree to it. Unless we agree to it, it's not legitimate. And I don't trust anybody else with that. I've told individuals, don't get a gun, don't get involved in politics. I'm not interested in other people's Second Amendment rights. I'm only interested in my own. Because it's not about one's individual right to carry around a sidearm or a pistol. It's about controlling the weapons of war. It's about control at the highest levels. So they say like, well, everybody's equal. Everybody's disarmed, or everybody's armed. We'll say everybody's armed, and everyone has equal footing. Okay, cool with me. But as soon as somebody gets an advantage, they're going to use that against myself and others, and that is not acceptable. So therefore, I take that position. How do I take that position? I make that claim. I show how I'm related to all the royal families of Europe. I state my case, and I make actions, and that's all anybody can do at any time.
Well, we're just about out of time. Would any of the callers or each of the callers have a last question for Chris here? Yes, if I may. Are you familiar, Chris, with the book The Creature on Jekyll Island with the Federal Reserve?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I wish we had time. Maybe we can have you on later. Maybe you can indulge in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would like to just reference one of the documentaries. I was a expert. They call me an economist on television, and I put my economic analysis against anyone, and I've debated a lot of well-known economists. But there's one series that we made. It was Press TV, and it was myself, Webster Tarpley, G. Gordon, E. Edward Griffin, who wrote Creature from Jekyll Island. Ron Paul made a little cameo in this as well. But it's a series called, it's a documentary called The International Banking Cartel. And it was part of a TV series that I was a guest expert on several episodes called The Money Trail, which was a Press TV series. And we go through how the international banking cartel works. So we cover Jekyll Island, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Fort Knox, the gold, the price of gold, the Bank for International Settlements, etc. So check that out as well if you haven't seen that already. They have banned it off of all channels on YouTube, but we have archived it. So it's called the International Banking Cartel. It was just this past year. It was made back in 2012, and an Italian company has called in the copyrights on it about 3 or 4 months ago, which I've tried to get to the bottom of and still can't get to the bottom of how my work is somebody else's property. But yeah, International Banking Cartel. We go through all that stuff that was included in Creature from Jekyll Island and more.
On that note, if someone wants to get in touch with you about anything, is there an email?
Yeah, I can always be reached.
To reach you?
Yeah, it's you can go to chris-dorsey.com. It has my email, which is RVA, like Richmond, Virginia, but just the initials RVA, the number 4, PEACE, at gmail.com. That's RVA for peace at gmail.com.
Excellent. And from the other callers, did you have something else you wanted to contribute?
I just wanted to say this big disconnection for the masses is how this international banking cartel is directly causing what I'm seeing right now as I walk through the streets of San Francisco, and the poverty is just outrageous. It's ridiculous. There's people sleeping on the street like every other block. It's absolutely disgusting, and it needs to come to an end. And that's what Chris works towards, and that's what all members of the militia, wherever they can be found, because this truly is a global movement.
Thank you for calling tonight. And David, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I'll make it very brief. Anyway, I know what martial law looks like because I've briefly lived under it during Hurricane Katrina, and I've seen how displacement works, how easy it is to get you to go into a government internment program. So again, it's like I said, if you live in the United States, you plan on immigrating here. In the words of Clifford, you better be ready to fight. Whether that be physical or either way, physical or intellectually. But either way, you're going to have to fight because that's the only way to win a war.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And thank you as well for contributing tonight. Okay, Chris, well, any final words for you? And I would definitely appreciate chatting again sometime.
Yeah, I really had a good time. I thank you very much. I loved the structure of the show. We covered a lot of ground, and it's all thanks to the format that you put together. So I really appreciate it. All we can say is I reiterate what Clifford and David said, and to all the American people, if you have any bit of honor and you have any bit of love of anything that is good, you better be ready to fight. And what we say to everyone out there is join us or die. Because you have those two choices. Not that we're going to kill you. The enemy's going to kill you. I mean, they have plans set forward in stone down in Georgia with these Georgia Guidestones for a reason. They have these mass extinction plans forwarded by the UN and forwarded by the United States military for a reason. It's not just to have alternative media folks stirring up scare tactics and peddling in fear porn. It's the fact that they're already doing it that is the most important part, and we have to neutralize the government and all of their supporters by any means necessary, and it will happen eventually. The folks will have had enough. We see it now in the protests in Spain and in Hong Kong. So we'll see how it goes, but we're going to continue to be the only legitimate Americans, and we are the people of God, and we have clearly engaged with the enemy, and we will not stop until they are all neutralized.
A lot of people are claiming those protests over in Hong Kong are not grassroots. A lot are saying that it's American government motivated.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And as we said before, there's all sorts of factions that we are going to form, and it's our best strategic move to have our enemies kill each other. That's what we pray for. That's what we wish to have, and we will not engage with our enemies until we're ready to defeat them. We're familiar with the art of war. We don't engage in battles that we can't win. So yeah, I mean, I hope all those people kill each other. Absolutely. But what we wish to see is Putin, Trump, Obama, Bush, Xi Jinping, and all the other leaders of all the governments and corporations of the world in front of a firing squad. And that's the only solution. And anyone who is working towards anything else, they are government shills and working for the government. And that's just the way it is. There is global war. War is everywhere. And unless you follow our lead, you are serving the synagogue of Satan.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all that. Thank you for being here. And definitely look forward to having you on again sometime soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Much appreciated, Richard. Thanks, and God bless.
You as well. Have a good night, sir.
All right,
Cheers.
thank you. All right.